Welcome back. You are tuned in to Traders Nation. My pleasure to have with us here today Jeff Krames, book author at Inside Druckers' Brain. Jeff, welcome to Traders Nation. How are you today?
I'm great, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Oh, good. Pleasure is ours, without a doubt. Jeff, now, who is Peter Drucker? For those that don't know who he is, give us a brief overview.
Absolutely. Peter Drucker, who unfortunately passed away 2 years ago, is known as the father of management, or the father of modern management, because it was literally Peter Drucker, starting back in the 1940s, who really invented the discipline of management. I mean, even before Drucker, they didn't even use the word organization to describe corporations. So he literally came up with so many of the ideas and concepts that became really the thesis of so many best-selling books of the last 30 years.
Sure. Now, it's all right, so it's safe to say that his ideas, his concepts, literally are used from coast to coast for managers and organizations, correct, on a daily basis?
Not only coast to coast.
Worldwide?
Absolutely. He's probably sold over 10,000 copies outside the United States.
Yeah.
Which will compare to about 15 to 20,000. I'm sorry.
10 million?
10 million copies outside the United States. Thank you.
You're right.
Compared to about the 15 to 20 million copies he sold domestically. Yeah. In fact, you know, some of his books that are 30 years old are on bestseller lists right now around the world.
Yeah. Now, after meeting with him, now you spent a day with him, right?
Yes, I had the good fortune to spend a full day with him at his home.
Right.
3 days before Christmas 2003.
Yeah. Now, all right, so you spent a day with Mr. Drucker, and what would you consider probably the most important ideas and strategies that he conveyed to you?
Well, I think his seminal idea of abandonment, which would be counterintuitive and strange to so many people, but he came up with the theory of abandonment. That is, that companies and managers, and you know, we have so much on our plate these days between our voicemails, our hundreds of voicemails, and all this stuff that we got to do, that we often don't know how to abandon projects, abandon products, abandon or leave behind those things that no longer work. He was all about embracing the future and sort of discarding all this stuff that gets in between us performing our real jobs.
Sure. You know, it's important for managers to realize this, and I think that's a great point, Jeff, is that a business really is, whether small or a very large corporation, a living, breathing machine and thing. And you've got to be able to recognize change when it happens, and you've got to be able to make those changes and implement those changes, so you can't hold on to the old. It's like trading stocks, Jeff. It's like what worked 2 weeks ago and you made a lot of money with is not working today. You got to figure out, hey, wait a minute, I've got to change my course of strategy on how this is going to happen.
You know, that's a great analogy. Just like with stocks,
yeah,
people don't want to let go of their losers.
Sure.
And he called this in management. He called it investment in managerial ego. Yeah. I mean, if you were the manager of a company and you were the one who really was the impetus for a big important project that your company implemented, and it's just not working, you're not going to be the first guy to say, "Listen, you know, this project failed. Let's give it up."
Sure. Right, and you have to do it. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it is ego in the end, and ego will destroy a lot of things. All right, so what are the strategies that are just as important today from Mr. Drucker as they were, let's say, a decade ago?
Well, and that's a great question, Kurt, and that's really what I tried to do, because remember, he's written something like 38 books, and I tried to come up with the 15 seminal ideas that work today just as well as they did when he first wrote them. For instance, have an outside-in perspective. So many of us who work for corporations sort of get locked in by the four walls, and we don't take on the perspective of our customers and our suppliers, so we don't have that outside perspective. So gaining an outside perspective is one of his great ideas. I mentioned the whole thing about abandonment. Let go of the past, of what doesn't work anymore, and start embracing new ideas and new innovations. And by the way, innovation was something in business that was hardly talked about, and just as strategy was not even a word ever associated. In fact, when he first wanted to use the word strategy, in one of his books, his publisher told him, "You can't use the word strategy as it pertains to management. That's a term you're only going to find with the military. You won't find it in business." And he was the first guy to coin the term management strategy as well.
Oh, wow.
So there's lots of stuff on strategy.
Sure.
There's things there on sort of the information revolution, how important it is for managers today
Sure.
to be demanding the most important kinds of information they need to perform their jobs. So it's just, inside Drucker's brain, I try to really just, even though it's a short book that you could read on a plane from probably New York to Chicago, I try to make it to include all of his seminal ideas and show companies how they can implement it today.
Yeah, now, Jeff, that publisher of old would just roll over today, not only this strategy an absolute key to the success of a business, but they would also hate this word too, execution of that strategy, Jeff.
Absolutely, and execution, that's a great point, Kurt. Execution, was the best-selling book that was written in 2002, but as early as like 1954, he started to write about execution. He just didn't call it that. He didn't come up with a lot of the fancier words that people came up with later, but his whole thing was about performance and about measuring performance and about self-directing yourself to be able to improve all the time.
Right.
And so execution was absolutely one of the keys. Actually, I devote a full chapter to execution in the book because it was absolutely one of the real keys to what defines Drucker and what made him so special so early on.
Now, Jeff, in your opinion, what would you say would be Mr. Drucker's biggest contribution?
Well, as he told me on the day we got together, he established management as a social discipline. And before him, that workers were thought of as only as cost. Not even, they weren't even up to the point where they were considered cogs in the machine.
Sure.
They were considered just costs on the balance sheet. And he came to humanize workers to the point where he said that the biggest challenge, he said this was as early as the 1950s, that the biggest challenge for knowledge workers, that is educated people, professionals, people who make their living working for companies, that their biggest challenge is going to be partnering, another chapter I have in the book, partnering with the people who you work with, meaning the people who work for you, your direct reports, you need to partner with them because going forward in the years to come, it's going to be our scarcity of talent that's going to separate the good companies from the mediocre companies. So learning how to partner with workers is really something that's paramount to success, and I tell people how to do that as well in the book.
Yeah, now let's go even further on that because he was absolutely convinced, and as it's proven today, that you can actually build on those people's strengths.
Absolutely. Another great point, Kurt. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
He was the first guy who said, listen, one can only build on strengths. One can do nothing with weakness. And to tell you how that's been applied today, take somebody like Toyota University located on the West Coast.
Right.
You know that when they do a performance review of an employee or a manager, they're not even permitted to mention anything negative about that employee or manager, only if the person themselves brings it up. So here you are doing performance reviews, and you can only talk about the positive. And he recognized early on that one can only break down with weaknesses. You can't build up. So you must manage on strengths. You must figure out what people's strengths are, what your own strengths are, and then make sure that you put people match strength on strength where they can give you the greatest contribution possible on a day-to-day basis.
All right, so it's safe to say Drucker's key ideas were on leadership, strategy, innovation too, by the way, personal effectiveness, and then lastly, career development, just to name a few, right?
Absolutely. All of that applies. Yeah. And he was really that well-rounded a guy, and you don't find people like that. That's why, of course, it was such a loss that he did pass away 2 years ago. And I think the book actually, which is published today, includes the last. I think this is the last major interview that I know of that's not ever been published before. So this would be sort of the last word from the great man, from Peter Drucker. But yeah, he was expert in all the areas you just outlined and many more.
What an honor for you, right, Jeff?
Yeah, it was really an unbelievable day for a guy
Yeah.
who makes his living publishing books and publishing other people.
Right.
It was an absolute privilege to sit with him for those 7 hours and even take him Christmas shopping for his wife in the middle of the whole thing.
Right.
So yeah, it was really an incredible day.
All right, now Jeff, where can we find a copy of Insider's
Inside Drucker's Brain? All you got to do is go to Amazon.com. It's up and for sale right now at a good discount. BarnesandNoble.com.
Sure.
You can go to any major bookstore. We'll have it as of today.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you asking such great questions, Kurt.
You're more than welcome. Now, Jeff, do you have a website people can find?
Absolutely. You can go to either it's one website, but either of these two addresses will take you there.
Yeah.
InsideDruckersBrain.com,
Nice.
which I include a lot of extra stuff about sort of inside the world of business book publishing.
Yeah.
Or Jeffrey Krames, it's JeffreyKrames.com. JeffreyKrames.com or InsideDruckersBrain.com.
Head on over those two websites. Say, Jeffrey, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Kurt. I really enjoyed it.
You're more than welcome. All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back.